Hello, real brief video. One of my viewers, Mr. Santiago, thanks Eddie, sent me a little care package. It's another EICO 249, and the front panel here, oops, this meter's already dead, so that's not a problem. The front panel appears to be in a little bit better condition than mine. There's a tiny little blemish here, but there is no staining down on the bottom edge where mine is very stained from whatever the unit sat in. It also has a battery holder in excellent condition. We can give this a little polish and use it to replace the totally corroded one I have. A good power transformer should mine fail. I can replace my broken switch. There's a good switch, and I've noticed this one has a ceramic wafer on the range switch, which mine does not. Mine has one of these phenolic ones, and the phenolic ones are prone to leakage and measurement errors, so I probably will just swap out the entire switch package. I believe this front panel will clean up beautifully. He also sent along both of the tubes, a cabinet which with a quick spray would be which would clean up very nicely, and the meter movement. Now the needle is missing from the meter movement. Unfortunately, the meter movement is dead. However, the bezel's in very good shape, so if somebody out there has a broken bezel on their meter, I could pay it forward. This one would clean up very nicely. Right now it's very dull, but that stuff is taken care of very quickly. We have my top secret restoration formula here, so don't look at the video because I'll have to send a Rambogram. But if we just take a little bit of this and just a couple of seconds work, and I hope that's noticeable compared to that side, we have this side. A few more minutes spent on that, this bezel would clean up very nicely. So if someone has a broken bezel, let me know, and we'll see if we can get that forwarded to you. And again, Eddie, thank you very, very much. Appreciate it greatly. This will go a long ways towards making my EICO 100%. We're down here in the main lab where I can use some of the parts that Eddie so graciously sent to me. We've got the wafer switch for the range, which has the ceramic back on it as opposed to the one that has the phenolic back on it that's in my unit. This one will provide a much higher leakage or higher resistance leakage path. And while I'm at it, I am going to characterize all of the resistors that are in here. I'll pick the best of the 1%ers that were on here and the best of the 1%ers that are on my range switch, and try to get a little more accuracy out of the high-end settings. We might as well change out. I had a broken, the phenolic had broken on my switch. This is the function switch and the on-off switch. I had repaired mine, but while it's apart, I might as well put the one in. These spent about 2 hours last night in my ultrasonic cleaner, and came out very, very nice. They were pretty dirty, but they're nice and clean now. And we've put a little bit of what is called Phonolube. It's a very light grease on the detent, and I've put a couple of tiny little dots of silver conductive grease on the contacts just to give them some lubrication and make sure they're reliable. We're going to measure all of the resistors. Over there in the background is my Hewlett-Packard. Let me get something to point with here. Oh gosh, there we go. We've got my Hewlett-Packard 3465A, and right now it's measuring the resistance of my homemade 4-wire leads, and it's showing 0.002 ohms. Oh, 1 ohm. And that's probably mostly the resistance in the alligator clips. I don't have gold-plated alligator clips. I've got those standard cheapy CAD-plated alligator clips. A set of real probes for that is several $100s, so I'm going to live with the 0.002 ohms resistance. And let's see, what else? Oh, the battery holder. This unit that Eddie sent me had a very, very nice battery holder in it. We cleaned that all up, polished it, and that looks brand new. So we'll put that in and replace the plastic one that I installed. And we'll be back basically to original. And should my power transformer ever fail, the one that was steeped in battery guts, we have a power transformer here that we could use. You can see the inside of this one obviously sat open for a while. So we cleaned everything up. Like I say, the switches were in kind of the same condition, but they've cleaned up beautifully after a couple of hours in the ultrasonic cleaner. So we'll get this together, take a couple pictures of it. Okay, we've finished up the EICO finally. Finally got a weekend home where I had a little time to finish cleaning this up. Only to find out my computer wouldn't work, wouldn't power up, and struggled with that for a couple of nights, got that working. Something's dying. I think it's the video card. The power supply itself seems fine, but if you shut the computer down, you cannot get it to restart. If you let it sit unpowered for 2 or 3 days, then it seems to want to wake up again. If I only put it to sleep, it's fine. It will come back out of sleep mode, but if I shut everything down and power down the video and everything else, it doesn't want to come back on. So it's time for a new computer. At any rate, I digress. We have the EICO back together. We've got the donor parts that Eddie so graciously sent to me, and I still haven't heard back from him in an email. I'm going to try again. But at any rate, we have the ceramic range switch installed that I pulled out of his after it went through a long soak in my ultrasonic cleaner, and the selector switch for the functions has also been replaced. This was my original one that was broken, that has the patch to hold it back together and a bunch of epoxy in here. And this is my original range switch, which I believe was contaminated with the battery chemicals. And even though I cleaned this multiple times, when you got up into the higher voltage ranges, the meter began to become wildly inaccurate, especially on the 500 and 1000 volt ranges. And the meter, the resistors were fine. I measured the resistors, but I think the phenolic was breaking down under the higher voltages. Anyway, we fixed that. We have the ceramic switch in here. We completely stripped this, and then we went through and hand picked resistors, 1% resistors. I went through my 1% resistors. A lot of these resistors are not common values, so by mixing 2 or 3 resistors together, I'm able to come up with resistor combinations that were better than 0.5%. I went through here and just got these resistor divider resistors as close as I possibly could, and to do that I used my Hewlett-Packard 3456A, this device right here, and netted these resistors in. I know that meter is very, very, very accurate. I've checked it against a couple of standards, and it's spot on. So the resistors in here are very, very, very precise. This meter now tracks from range to range to range very accurately. The ohm meter, it is also it tracks extremely well from range to range to range. It was well worth the work and time it took me to go through the resistors and net everything in correctly. So we're very, very happy. Oh, and we have the battery holder that came out of the donor that Eddie sent to me. So I am very, 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 very happy with this, and very, very grateful to Eddie for sending along those parts. We still have the chassis from the EICO. We have the cabinet, of course, and the broken meter movement. I'm going to hang on to the power transformer in case this one fails, because that one was well soaked in battery chemicals. It seems to be fine at the moment. We have the selenium rectifier. We have the potentiometers, should we need spares for this meter. Somebody, it looks like, went in here at one point in time and started changing capacitors and probably found out that the meter movement was dead. So we're going to throw these away. These are no good. Oh, one other thing. A lot of the resistors that were in here are these 1% resistors that have this, I don't know what, it isn't cardboard, it's some kind of a phenolic coating on these. And this one, which came off of the donor that Eddie gave me, was 200, this is a 1 meg ohm, it was 200,000 ohms high in value, which puts it well out of tolerance. But at any rate, where can I find it? The reason I replaced all of these, even if some of these were well within what their 1%, in fact some of these were right on the money, but I don't trust this 60 or 70 year old phenolic part that's on the outside. I could have stripped them off, I suppose, but if that absorbs moisture, it's going to change the value of the resistor. It's going to lower the value of the resistor. In this case, this resistor is very high in value, but it's dry at this point. The humidity down here is very low. But that's, I don't know what these are made out of. It's some kind of, probably a wire wound resistor, but I don't see any place where the wire has been welded to the cup here. So I really don't know how this one's made. Briefly after I got out of the service, I worked in a place that wound precision power resistors, and when we wound them onto the ceramic substrate, we would hold the wire over the end, and you had a little spot welder that spotted it to the end cap, but I don't see any spot weld on here, so I'm not sure how these are made. At any rate, it's junk. It's going in the trash. That's it. We're going to put this thing back together, get it up on the bench. And I've got to get the video edited for the last of the pilot radio. That's finished as well, but with the computer being down and my being out of town so much lately, I haven't had a chance to finish it up. And I just found out I'll be working here next to home for Monday and possibly Tuesday this week, and then I'm going to go off again on, I'll be up in Maine at a customer site, and that could go as long as a week up there. So it's gonna be tough getting videos out. Trying to do it in the hotel at night isn't really. Oh, we kept the front panel that we had. The front panel that came with the donor set, when it was dirty, looked a lot better than this one because it didn't have the staining down here in the corners that this one has. However, once I got all the dirt off, the whole area around here was fine pits and fine scratches. It was actually not as clean as this panel. So we've set it aside. It's not bad. It's not a bad panel. If somebody has a really, really bad panel, let me know. We'll see if we can pay it forward and get that off to you. And if somebody needs, again, I mentioned earlier in the video, if somebody needs one of these meter housings, if you have a good meter movement with a broken glass or a cracked bezel, let me know. We have an intact bezel. It just needs a good polishing, and the glass is intact. It'll have to be glued back in, but the enclosure itself's in good shape, and we can pay that forward to you. Anyway, that's it. I'm done. It's late. I'm going to go upstairs, get something to eat, go to bed, get ready to go. Just one more thing before we go. Like all my analog meters, in fact all of my own meters, anything that'll read resistance, I characterize what the current drain is at least the first three ranges. This EICO on R times 1 is pulling 135 milliamperes through the probes. Now you wouldn't want to test a 0.1 ampere fuse or 100 milliampere fuse with this meter on R times 1. Good chance you're going to blow the fuse, 135 milliamperes. You'd be safe at R times 10, R10 if it's only 15 milliamperes, and then it's going to go up in decade steps. R times 100 would be 1.5, R times 1000 would be 0.15 milliamperes, and so on, 150 microamps. Unlike my Hewlett-Packard over here, that's a 10 gig ohm impedance meter. That only draws 1 milliampere maximum on any of the ohms ranges. And whoops, should slow the pan down a little bit here. And the same thing goes for this fluke meter right here. This is another 10 gig ohm impedance meter that only draws 1 milliampere on all the ranges. So those are perfectly safe. But I know I've shown this before. Oh, I'm not gonna have too much junk on the bench. Let's go down here. This guy right here, this analog meter, the triplet. R times 1 on this particular meter is 300 milliamperes. You would certainly blow that 100 milliampere fuse on that. So you have to be careful when you're measuring low value fuses with any analog meter. You're going to go through a whole box of fuses and think they're all bad. That's it. I'm done. See you soon. Bye.